Imagine you can travel back in time, to a time long before man. Back across 65 million years. As you travel, you would see huge changes in the vegetation and the climate. Even the surface of the Earth itself would move as mountain ranges are pushed up by colliding continents.
Walking with Dinosaurs is a prehistoric nature documentary made by the BBC. It's done in the style of a traditional nature documentary about modern animals, but focuses on prehistoric animals that lived during the Mesozoic era, millions of years ago, mainly focusing on the dinosaurs. It was the first documentary ever to do this, and despite airing in 1999, exactly 20 years ago, it's aged extraordinarily well, and no other dinosaur documentaries even come close to living up to the standards set by Walking with Dinosaurs. It has unparalleled atmosphere and authenticity when it comes to raw documentary making, and no documentary of its caliber on the subject of prehistoric life has been made since. Except for the others in the Walking With trilogy, though in my opinion this one is still superior to the other two. It was groundbreaking and revolutionary, and that can still be felt after all these years. The program uses both CGI and animatronics to bring these amazing creatures back to life, and it portrays them as living, breathing animals, just like modern animals living today, not ferocious monsters always out for the kill. It shows many aspects of the featured animals' lives, educating its audience on their evolution, anatomical features, diet, how they hunted and fought, how they reproduced, and much more, and it's shot as if the animals are actually in front of the camera. The CGI and animatronics look great even by today's standards, making the animals look very convincing, lifelike, and realistic in both their animation and design. It was shot in real locations, each one reflecting the prehistoric setting the episode takes place in. And just like a nature documentary about modern animals, narration accompanies the footage of the animals and their environment. The narration is done by Kenneth Branagh, who does a fantastic job and was the perfect choice. Furthermore, the documentary is accompanied by an incredible musical score by composer Ben Bartlett. The soundtrack is full of wonder, excitement, suspense, ambience, and even sadness. There are themes that are awe-inspiring, heart-wrenching, and even chilling. All of this makes this documentary an exceedingly engaging viewing experience full of grandeur, emotion, excitement, and education. Even though we know so much more about dinosaurs today than we did back in 1999 when the show aired due to more discoveries, and therefore some of the things these episodes show are outdated, it is still an amazing series to watch. There is still a lot to be learned from it, and it holds up very well today in terms of enjoyability and feeling like you're actually looking at the prehistoric world. To celebrate the program's 20th anniversary, I'm going to be doing an in-depth analysis of the series, going over each episode. I will upload one review every week, and each one will actually be posted on the exact date they aired 20 years ago in 1999, starting with this one. That's right, the first episode of Walking with Dinosaurs aired on BBC television on this exact day. I will go over the story, the animals featured, and do a brief scientific analysis for each episode. Now, let's begin. The first episode, New Blood, takes us back in time first to the Cretaceous period and then the Jurassic period to give us a nice glimpse of what we'll see in future episodes, before finally taking us to the main setting of the episode, the Late Triassic period, specifically 220 million years ago in what would later become North America, but back then the only continent was one giant landmass called Pangaea. The setting for this episode is really good, a gorgeous lush environment in the wet season and a harsh barren desert for the dry season, both of which fitting the tone of the episode at the time. There are 4 main animals in the episode that we follow. Coelophysis, a small early theropod dinosaur that was very slim and agile, and the main focus of the episode. A family of synapsids called cynodonts, a transitional form between reptiles and mammals. Placerius, a heavy, lumbering species of dicynodont, a more ancient synapsid that made up the majority of the population after the Permian extinction. And Postosuchus, a Rauisuchian, a group of archosaurs related to dinosaurs, which are also archosaurs, and the largest carnivore on Earth at the time. It starts at the end of the wet season with only one Coelophysis in the beginning, a large herd of Placerius thriving by the river, and the Cynodont family living peacefully in their burrow. But as the episode progresses, we see more and more Coelophysis, giving the impression that their populations are rising. As they multiply, they start competing for food and forcing the Cynodont family into the shadows, basically trapping them in their own burrow. They also adapt much better to the dry season, which goes on for longer than usual, than the Placerius, which are seen less and less as the episode progresses. Meanwhile, a female Postosuchus is first seen successfully hunting and killing a Placerius, establishing it as the powerful top predator. However, she later receives a leg wound that heavily cripples her, weakening her and preventing her from hunting. She loses her territory to another stronger Postosuchus and is eventually eaten alive by a large group of Coelophysis after losing the use of her back legs. This is actually a quite powerful scene, seeing the mighty top predator being eaten alive by the smaller dinosaurs, and is the first example of this entire series' recurring theme that no matter how powerful, mighty, and invincible something may seem, their reign will not last forever. In addition, we briefly see a small Triassic pterosaur called Dinosaurs hunting down a fly, foreshadowing the dominance of pterosaurs in the Mesozoic skies. Once the rains finally come, the Coelophysis have survived, the Cynodonts continue to live in the shadows of the larger dinosaurs, and a large herd of basal sauropods called Plateosaurus arrive, all foreshadowing the age of the dinosaurs after the upcoming Triassic extinction, which took place 201 million years ago, even literally saying,
"This is the shape of things to come."
It makes for an interesting, intense plot that will leave you at the edge of your seat with some nail-biting, suspenseful moments. There are some pretty shocking scenes, and it actually makes you sympathize with all the animals, despite all of them being in fierce competition with one another. On the scientific side of things, there are some problems to be found here, though most of them have a viable explanation. Plateosaurus actually came from Europe, not North America, where the program takes place. Even though this was when all the continents were joined together, an animal herd traveling that far of a distance would be quite a bit of a stretch. Furthermore, though it was accurate for its time, it's now known that Plateosaurus and other basal sauropodomorphs weren't quadrupeds, but instead were completely bipedal, as they couldn't pronate their hands. Dinosaurs also has only been found in Europe, though it's more likely for it to have traveled to North America occasionally due to being able to fly. The depiction of Dicynodonts and Rauisuchians as having the top speed of a turtle pace is outdated. Rauisuchians like Postosuchus are now believed to have been pretty fast, and are even thought to be bipedal now, though this was still heavily debated at the time and it was leaning more towards a quadrupedal stance. And finally, there was a brief moment in this episode that actually caused a huge controversy. The scene in which a male Postosuchus is seen urinating copiously after winning in a confrontation with the main female Postosuchus over her territory as a way of marking it. Some critics of the show said this was a mistake, as modern archosaurs like birds and crocodiles don't urinate copiously, but shed waste chemicals as more solid uric acid. However, Michael J. Benton, a paleontologist who consulted on the series, noted, equally though, we can't prove that Postosuchus did not urinate like this. Copious urination is the primitive state for tetrapods, as seen in fish, amphibians, turtles, and mammals, and it might have been retained by some basal archosaurs. However, the lifestyle and the behavior of the animals depicted holds up pretty well to my knowledge, and the show should be commended for that. The speculation for all their behaviors is pretty reasonable. The Coelophysis, Dinosaurs, and Placerius models still look pretty accurate to the real animals, except for the pronated hands on the Coelophysis, an error with all theropods in the program. The Cynodont model looks accurate to the genus it was modeled after, and the Postosuchus and Plateosaurus reconstructions were anatomically correct for their time. And of course, they all have top-notch color schemes, skin textures, animation, and sound design. Overall, this episode is a great starting point for the series. It has a gripping plot that does a good job showcasing each of the Archosaur and Synapsid groups that lived in the late Triassic. Despite a couple animals being placed on the wrong continent, the episode was pretty scientifically accurate for its time, all things considered. It's a really solid episode that begins the show on a really high note.